All right, Casey, today, and actually for quite a while, I've been flying a red-tailed hawk for the first time in a while. And when I pull that big girl out, everybody's eyeing the gear up. And first and foremost, they see those sexy little squirrel chaps that she's wearing.
Where'd those come from?
They came from mountainstateFalconrySupply.com. And you know the best part about it? I'm in North Carolina. I ordered from Heather on, let's say, Saturday. I think they were here like Monday or Tuesday. It was like incredible. Being able to get something quickly on the East Coast is important to me because I don't know about you. I am like super scatterbrained about my falconry supplies. And it's like I decide I need something, but really I needed it a week ago. So yeah, it's good just to have Heather here on the East Coast. So I highly encourage people to check her out at mountainstatefalconrysupply.com. All right, Casey.
Yeah, what's up?
Let's talk tight, okay?
I love talking tight. Let's do it.
You're using it. Harrison's using it. I'm using it. Everybody's using it. Everybody who's anyone's using it. When we want the best, we go for the tightest. And who's doing the tightest?
Richard Moats at midnightfalconry.com.
That's right.
Aaron, we're supposed to be doing a podcast right now. What are you reading?
Oh, sorry, dude. I'm just enamored by this book I'm checking out by Bob Glass.
I can see the beautiful pictures from here. That's all I care about.
I know you're a picture guy, but there's a lot of really good words in here too.
I don't like the words.
Well, I do, but it's A Journey with Red Tails by author Bob Glass. Are you familiar with him, Casey?
Yeah, I grew up with Bob since I got into falconry. Before I was even in falconry, I met Bob. The guy has been flying everything for a tremendous amount of time, has a lot of experience, especially with red tails. And he decided, screw it, I'm going to write a book. And it's a really good book, excellent quality. He put his heart and soul into the thing. I got one right here behind me. It's excellent. Go check him out at ajourneywithredtails.com.
So today, Casey, after my red tail jackhammered a squirrel out of the tree in front of 20 people, we also put the goshawk up. And this goshawk is just wowing everybody with its acrobatics, just spiraling around trees after squirrels, flying to and fro through the treetops with ease. And I think you know where this bird came from.
I'm sure I would. The only place that a bird should come from. NorthMountainGoshawks.com for your next hunting partner. Visit him on Facebook and his website and fill out the questionnaire and tell him the Sporting Chance sent you. Winner of the most viewed episode of the year, Sean O'Neill, episode 22. Sean has a tremendous amount of experience with sighthounds, terriers, and pretty much any dog in between. His episode covered everything from acting in the Ninja Turtles movies to chasing down coyotes with his dogs. Sean has come on board and would like to offer the opportunity to our listeners to purchase dogs that he breeds himself. They'll chase anything from hares to bears. Go check him out at Clover Creek Canines on Facebook.
Okay, welcome everyone to the Sporting Chance podcast. I am Aaron Kincaid.
And I'm Casey Everett.
Today we are joined by hunter Bear Newcomb. Thanks for coming on, Bear.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I think hunter's a little bit of an understatement. He hunts, he traps, he builds his own bows, he naps his own points, runs dogs, vice, right?
Yep. And I will say I am a little inexperienced on the trapping end of things.
Well, you got a couple in the trap, so
it's true.
Better than me. Yeah, man.
So, Bear, how long have you been hunting?
Since I was a kid. I've got a picture of me on my dad's back with him he had a trad bow and a doe out in front of him. And I think I was just like a couple months old. It was or maybe even a month old. It was in December. I was born in November and I was just like an infant. So,
that's awesome.
From day one, I've been hunting.
That's what I'm talking about. It's a good childhood right there.
Yeah.
I've got a picture of my daughter. I'm holding her as a baby, newborn baby, and I've got a great horned owl sitting on my knee.
Oh, nice.
So I try getting her out in the field, but she's a little whiny about it. It doesn't work terribly well. So I'm holding out hope that she gets better.
Yeah, I got a picture when I was an infant, and my dad was driving the bus. No,
Nice.
nowhere to be seen. No, my dad was a good dad. He just worked a lot.
Mhm.
So that's about it. So, Bear, how old are you?
I'm 19. Just turned 19.
You're a grown man. All right,
Yep.
cool.
Exactly.
And you'd said your dad, so you come from a hunting family?
Yeah. So my great grandpa was a bird hunter, and then my grandpa was kind of like on the front end of the deer hunting, like right as it was starting to become popular. He was kind of getting into the bow hunting side of things. And then my dad has hunted since he was a kid. And then I've hunted since I was a kid. So
What kind of birds was your grandpa hunting?
he was hunting bobwhite quail.
Do you guys still have any bobwhite down there?
Not many. There are some, and every now and then you'll hear guys hunting them, but there are not very many.
And when I say down there, where do you live exactly?
I'm in the Ozarks of Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas.
Very cool. Very cool.
I feel like that's right up Aaron's alley, right? Isn't that in your neck of the woods?
I'm in North Carolina. No, I'm not near the Ozarks.
It's not the same.
Yeah, we're in the South.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
That's awesome. So I have a question. Like on the show, we kind of bounce around a little bit, but it's more a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So like you said, your dad hunted a lot, stuff like that. Like, did you feel any pressure from your dad to hunt? Like, because I have a 5-year-old, right? 5-year-old
Mm-hmm.
son, and I have an 8-month-old son. So like, I'm trying to figure out how to get these kids in the field without like making them hate it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you seem like you're like obsessed with it, just like your dad probably was.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
were you always that way?
Yeah, I mean, I would say since I was young, I always really enjoyed hunting, but there was definitely never any pressure from my dad to hunt. Like, y'all might find this funny, but my older sister is like, she almost won't even eat meat. She's like borderline, like vegetarian, doesn't hunt at all. But I mean, she's still for it, but she doesn't hunt at all. So, there's never been any pressure. But, one thing my dad did do with all of me and my siblings is, for our first deer, he didn't let us kill bucks. He just kind of take us out on, like a high probability, doe hunt or something. And, we'd hunt 2 or 3 times and then shoot a doe, but just to kind of like get us into it, like we never really started out with hunting, big bucks or anything. And then just kind of from there, he just kind of he gave us the opportunity. And, for me, I took every bit of it that I could. And 2 of my other siblings, they hunt a little bit, but yeah,
that's awesome, man. Yeah, that's good. I guess easing the kids into it, I guess, is probably the key.
Mm-hmm.
Not dragging your son through the briar patch looking for rabbits. Probably not the best. Probably not the best technique.
I've heard people say small game's the way to get kids introduced to hunting and to get into it, because you got a high success rate, like going out in the woods and shooting squirrels or something.
Right.
Yeah, you don't have to be quiet. It's all fun. You can talk, especially if you're running dogs. You can let the dogs work while everybody has fun and talks. And then when they put something up, then then that's when the fun starts. But it's all fun and games pretty much the whole time you're out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and you do for small game. I see. It seems like you're really into squirrel hunting.
Yeah, we do a lot of squirrel hunting. So I've got 2 squirrel dogs right now. I got my first one like 5 years ago. I don't remember how old I was, but she is a killer. She's like right out the gate, she was treeing squirrels. And then I just bought another younger pup. Her name's Osage, and she's looking very promising. But yeah, we've been squirrel hunting with dogs and mules. That's kind of how I started getting into the squirrel hunting game, was riding around on mules with dogs.
All right. So this is an animal-based podcast, pretty much, where we have houndsmen that catch coyotes, guys that run bears. Obviously the falconry. So that's pretty sweet. I got so many questions, Aaron. I don't know about you. Like, how are you training these fiests? How are you getting the mule not to buck you off when you shoot right over its head? Like, Can you talk it like, what do you want to start with? You want to start with dogs first?
Yeah, let's start with the dogs.
Let's start with the dogs and then work our way up.
All right. So what exactly, to the uninitiated, what is a feist?
A feist would be I guess to describe it, it would be like between like a 20 and 30 pound dog, a lot of game drive, but they would tree. They'd be treeing squirrels. And there's a bunch of different, like, some people call them curs, some people call them feists. I'm really not totally sure on the difference, but a feist is just a small dog that trees squirrels.
Yeah, I think, right, Aaron, didn't we have somebody on that talked about AKC? It's basically a small treeing dog, but it doesn't necessarily have to be of a pure bloodline. It's just, if it's a good treeing dog,
Right.
then it's a feist. Similar to a lurcher, which we have a lot of lurcher guys that come on the show. A lurcher's not like a purebred. It's a sight hound cross that runs stuff down and kills it. So it doesn't really have to be a specific breed. Cool. So, all right, how are you training them?
So we're training them. Usually what we'll do is we'll let them just like run around the house for the first 6 months, and they'll just kind of run around, and they pretty naturally will tree squirrels or cats or chase armadillos, but just, you encourage any sort of game drive that they have. And so, like, for example, with this Osage dog, like, she'll go on walks with my mom every morning, and she'll just be hunting and treeing squirrels and chasing rabbits and just kind of all over the place. And, we'll reward that behavior. And then, the next step, we kind of get them trained to not be afraid of the gun. You don't want one to be gun shy. So we'll kind of shoot around them with some quieter guns, get them used to the guns, then tone train them with the collar. And then pretty much from there, it's just when they treat a squirrel, shoot it, and then start taking them with a more experienced dog. Like right now, I'm taking Osage with Tess, and they're kind of, she's kind of just figuring out the ropes by running with Tess. But and then kind of from there, it seems like squirrel dogs just have a lot of natural, instinctual drive to tree a squirrel. And so really they're pretty easy to train.
Do they ever get their teeth on a live squirrel?
Every now and then they do. Not intentionally, like not in the training process. Like, we've since I was like 9, we've had coon dogs until like the last year. Both our coon dogs died. But like with them, we would, trap a live coon, turn it loose, and then, send them on it maybe 15 minutes later. And that usually wouldn't end in them actually getting teeth on a coon, but it would be like a intentional way of getting an animal in front of them. With the squirrel dogs, we don't really do that.
Right. Yeah, their reward is when it falls out of the tree. I'm assuming they get to grab it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Now, are they bringing it back to you? Because you don't want to hop on and off your mule all day long. The dog's got to bring it back, right?
Not really.
Doesn't always work like that.
Nice, but not really. No. And usually, on the mules, we will shoot off the mules, but for me, I like to get off of them.
Yeah, because
you'll shoot off of them, but
I could think up on a mule trying to lean back, like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I could feel like, and the mule's moving and stuff.
It's chaos.
That's awesome. And then, okay, so now the mules, like, that's so foreign for me and Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
How are you train? Well, that's probably that's a whole podcast in itself, how to train a mule, I would imagine.
So
how long have you been doing that with the mules?
I don't do a ton with the mules. I just recently started working with a younger mule that we've got, but I'm not like a experienced mule trainer at all.
Right.
But my dad, he broke Izzy, which is his mule, and so I've been working with a new one that we have named Slow Trap, and this would be a very inexperienced perspective, but what I've been doing with him is starting out just kind of getting to where you can pet them and desensitizing them, because naturally, they're just very afraid of humans and anything new, really. And then you do what's called lunging them, where basically, get them in like a round pen and you'll run them in a circle pretty much. And, you have real specific cues that you give them. And you basically you want to be really predictable and give them the same cues every time. And just, you do that for really a pretty long time and just kind of gain their trust. But yeah, with mules, it's just more of a process of kind of like gaining their trust and slowly desensitizing them to new things. Like, like when you're lunging them, just running them in circles, you may throw a log, where they're running, and then sometimes
jump over it.
sometimes they'll just go right over it. And then, you try and throw like a shirt over its back and then work to a saddle blanket and then work to sawbucks and then work to a saddle. And then you actually get up on it. So it's kind of just like a slow process of desensitizing them pretty much.
The only experience I have with horses is I got kicked in the head by one when I was younger.
Dang.
That explains a lot. I was going to say, that explains a lot, Aaron. Jeez.
I'm joking. But a friend of mine was telling me something. She's a big horse person. She said something interesting. She said donkeys are fighters and horses are runners,
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
you're crossing the two of those, and you get something strange when you do that, according to her.
Yeah, I've heard like a horse, like you could get a horse to like run off a cliff and it'll just listen to you. A donkey is obviously a little more stubborn, and a mule is kind of the mix between them. They have, that's one of the big amenities for a mule, is that they have a lot of like self-preservation, so they won't do anything crazy with you on their back, like run off a cliff. But that does make them a little more stubborn.
They're a little smarter, right?
I'm not sure.
I don't know, because I read all those old like mountain men books, and they love their mules.
It's the smartest dumb animal on earth.
I guess it's a giant deer that you ride.
Pretty much,
if you think about it, man. Dude, that's so neat.
That's a whole nother element. We had a guy on earlier, Bear, named Chad Reynolds from the Houndsman XP podcast.
Okay.
And he does falconry off of a horse.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah, so he's riding the horse. Dogs are pushing jackrabbits out in the open, and he has a falcon that waits on above him, and then the dogs course the jackrabbit while the falcon takes shots at it.
No way.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. He's a cool guy.
Yeah, it's probably how falconry started out in the steppes of Asia, Mongolia, places like that, off a horseback with sight hounds on the ground with a falcon. Or
does that kind of just like give the falcon like a little higher, No,
the falcon is up. The falcon is released at the beginning of the hunt, and then the idea is that the falcon waits up in the clouds and watches the dogs. And when they kick up the jack, the problem with jackrabbits is that they can run like nobody's business, but if they know a hawk is chasing them, they'll use the cover to their advantage. So when he adds sight hounds in, the sight hounds they stay right on the jackrabbit's butt. So obviously it's not going to put into like just a sagebrush, because the dogs are going to kill it. So it knows that. So then it kind of is forced to just like try to outperform the sight hounds. And then as it's outperforming the sight hounds, that leaves it open for a clean shot from the falcon. Which is, it's pretty sweet. Yeah, I've never done any of that kind of falconry, but it's fascinating. Yeah, all I know is that if I tried to train a mule, I was thinking about it because I got some property here. And I was talking with a friend of mine who has horses and ponies, and his wife is like he breeds birds of prey, and his wife deals with the horses, and his daughters compete and like all that. And I was talking to his wife, and she just looked right at me and she said, it would kill you. You would kill yourself. It would just stomp you to death. I'm like, really? She goes, if you don't like know what you're doing and like you do something wrong and that thing, it just, so I'd probably get killed.
Yeah, it is kind of like a unique thing with mules. Apparently they can, like read body language really well. So like whenever you're on top of a mule, it's kind of like this positive feedback loop of like, if you're nervous, the mule's nervous.
Right.
So it's kind of this like unique challenge of really learning to kind of like, just be calm. Because like, especially, whenever you're in the woods and like they're just kind of moseying through the brush and there's low hanging limbs and there's squirrel dogs running around and people are shooting, like it's kind of easy to get real tense, and the mule gets tense. And so it is definitely a little bit of a challenge there.
Yeah, I could see that. And I wear my heart on my sleeve in the field, as Aaron has witnessed. Aaron has witnessed a couple of times, so I think my mule would probably just kill me and just leave me there.
Yeah, Casey doesn't know how to keep it chill out there.
Depends on the scenario, but yeah.
So what's your preferred firearm for plinking squirrels out of trees?
I like a 20 gauge. I'm a shotgun guy for sure, but 20
All
gauge
right.
is kind of like the nice balance of, it's not like blowing your shoulder off, but it still has enough power to get through some limbs.
And how many squirrels do you think you take a season on average?
That I have really no idea of knowing that, but we usually probably get like, well, we have two types of hunts. We kind of have like just like a quick afternoon outing that just like, I'll get some buddies together and we'll just go out for 2 hours and we may get 2 or 3 squirrels. And then we've got like these all day hunts on mules where we'll, like one time, I think last year we got like 30 in one day, which was like,
Oh my gosh.
most I've gotten for sure. But, like,
you'd be very disappointed as a falconer if you were trying to get that. A good day is like 3 squirrels as a falconer.
I mean, if you're pushing it, you can catch a bunch. I mean,
you ain't catching no 30, that's for sure.
No, you're not gonna. But he's not killing 30 by himself. He said he's with his friend.
Oh yeah, they were like on that particular hunt. There were like I think 17 people on mules. It was like a whole convoy.
Oh wow, yeah,
not everybody's guns, but there were a lot of hunters. But
I appreciate all that effort just for squirrels. That's kind of like what we
do. Yeah,
we put a lot of work into catching a squirrel.
Yeah, it's true. And a lot of the mule men, they're there for just the ride, and then your dog men, it's more than just the squirrels, but
absolutely,
in the end, the squirrel is really the only tangible thing you get from it.
Yeah, the squirrel is the excuse to get your dogs in the field working and to get yourself on a mule out with buddies.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Do you eat those squirrels?
Yeah, we do.
And cleaning squirrels is hard work.
It is. And they've got all sorts of little bones in them. And
oh yeah. What's your method for cleaning them?
Dude, the hide is like taking a moose's hide off. That thing is so tough to get. It's ridiculous.
It is. It definitely is.
So what's your preferred method for cooking? I'm assuming you're eating.
Cooking, we usually fry them, or slow cook them. It depends. The red squirrel's real tough, but so we'll slow cook those. But if we just get a gray squirrel, we'll usually fry it.
Okay. When you say red squirrel, you mean like pine squirrel, or you mean
red squirrel, like a red fox squirrel? Would y'all?
Fox squirrel. Oh, okay, fox squirrel.
Okay, yeah, fox squirrel.
Yeah, because we got red squirrels up here, and they're little tiny, annoying, like slightly bigger than a chipmunk, super fast.
Okay, so that's what. Yeah, I guess that's kind of like a interesting, dialect difference there. We just call it red squirrels, but I think technically they're a red fox squirrel.
Okay.
We called them in West Virginia, those little red squirrels you're talking about, Casey.
Yeah.
Fairy diddles.
Talk about a dialect difference. What is it? Fairy diddle?
Yeah, the little red ones, fairy diddles.
Yeah, they're cool. They're cool squirrels. Yeah, I heard. Yeah, they're cool. They're interesting. I see them chasing the gray squirrels around my yard all the time. They got an attitude on them. Suckers. Good stuff. So you're eating everything. You're out in the field. I want to talk about bows now.
Yeah.
Dude, how do you go from taking a stick and turn it into a weapon that can kill a deer, or you killed a bear too with one?
Yeah, I killed a bear in September with one.
Jeez. Okay. Talk us through that. Who taught you how to do that? Or you just figured it out on your own?
Well, so basically last deer season, I had a really good season. I killed like 4 deer, and you can kill 5 deer in the area where I'm at. And so I was like, and it was in November and we had like 3 months left of season. So I was like, well, for the last 3 months, just to kind of prolong my season, I'm going to try and take one with a traditional bow. And so I kind of just like went looking through my dad's bows, and he gave me this self bow, and it was a really cool bow. Actually, it is a snaky bow with 2 big knots on it and like purple heartwood on the handle. But I just kind of like, whenever I was shooting it and just looking at it, it was just cool to me that the guy who made it, and I knew the guy who made it, but he just kind of like took this wild thing and then just kind of followed, did what the tree wanted to do, followed the grain on it, and just kind of like made this. Really, it's a beautiful bow, and it shoots really good. And it was just cool to me that he could build something like that and then kill something, be accurate out to 20, 30 yards. And so we had some Osage logs actually cut up that had been sitting out in our backyard for a couple years that we were going to use for fence posts. But I basically watched like a YouTube video, Clay Hayes. He has some good self-bow videos. And I went, split a stave. And actually the first one I made, I spent like 6 hours on it, chasing the ring and kind of like getting the profile down. And I got a little impatient and decided I was just going to go with a table saw and just try and knock off some of the bulk. And pretty much within like 3 seconds of that, I'd cut into the back of the bow and it was ruined. And so that was the first attempt. Second attempt, I had like a real skinny stave, but was able to make a bow out of it. But it was like, a 20-pound draw or 20-pound pull. So, you couldn't have hunted with it, but it did shoot an arrow. And then the third bow, I really was like, okay, I just need to go slow. Because that was my issue with the first two is I just went too fast on them. It would be like, maybe a 10-hour process and I could have a bow. But I learned pretty quickly that you had to spend a lot more time than that. And so
okay.
So
I was just gonna say, so are you, I see videos, I follow a couple of guys, and so you're scraping it. You have it like in that device so it squeezes it, and then you work one end at a time, and you follow the grain with like a big blade.
Yeah. So you'll have a vise, and then because the first thing you want to do is chase a ring. So basically, you look at the wood and you look at the growth rings on that tree, and you kind of find the thickest one. Usually, the thicker it is, the better. And then you just remove all the wood above that ring. So all that's left is just that ring. And that'll be like the back, what they call the back of the bow, which would be the part that's facing away from you when you shoot it. But that kind of gives its strength and tension, is having just like one real clean ring.
Got it.
If you have any violations in that ring where it dips down into the next, it will pretty consistently break. You've got to have that one ring. And so that was one of the issues I had on my second bow that I actually shot it was 2 different rings going across the whole bow. So like you pulled it back past like 20 inches and you'd start to hear some cracking. So, but anyway,
yeah, man.
Yeah. And so the third bow, I was able to kind of get a ring chased, and that one was a functional bow. It came out at like 40 pounds, and I was aiming for 45, but got 40, and then it took set. So it turns out like, in like a full log, you need it to dry for 2 years pretty much.
Right. Yeah.
To get out. And usually like here in Arkansas where it's real humid, you want to go 1 year outside, 1 year inside. And these logs have been sitting out for 3 years probably, but just when they're in like a log form and have bark, it takes them a really long time to dry. And then you only get it to like 12% moisture content outside.
Are you testing that moisture with some sort of like machine, or are you just?
I did a few times just to kind of like learn my system, learn how long it took for them to dry outside and then move them inside. But
why dry them outside at all? Why not just bring them directly inside?
They dry quicker, just like in the wind and like when it's hot outside, you'll get most of the moisture out a lot quicker, but it'll just stop at 12%. Or here in Arkansas, at least.
It'll stop at 12% if it's outside.
Yeah. So it'll get
inside
12% pretty quick, or, in a year probably. And then you bring it inside and it'll you want it to be like between 8 and 10% is ideal. And inside, I mean, it can take 3 or 4 months inside sometimes, but usually like if you just have a bunch of staves, you just kind of go 1 year outside, 1 year inside.
And a stave is like, I'm guessing like a...
Yeah, so a stave would be like a split log. It's like basically envision like a 68-inch log split like firewood all the way down, creating little triangles, little wedges, and that would be your stave. So that'd be what you start with, and then you scrape off the bark and the sapwood, find your ring, and then you kind of start shaping the bow.
I think we could have a 3-hour podcast on this because I have a million questions.
Keep going, man.
Where are you starting? Are you starting on the pointy end of the triangle, or are you starting on the outer end?
Like on that stave, you start on the outside of that to get the ring.
So the roundest part you're looking
the
for,
round part of that stave.
and you don't want just the outside.
No, you want one specific, real clear ring, and you don't want like the bark or the sapwood is what it's called. So that, like if you look at a tree, kind of like the outer couple rings will be a different color than the inner rings.
Right.
That's sapwood, and you don't want that. Or at least on most bows. Some bows the sapwood is actually good, but on Osage you don't want the sapwood. You just want the heartwood, and you take off the sapwood and the bark, get it down to just a ring, and then you kind of draw. You start on one end of the stave and you follow the grain line, which is you can follow on Osage pretty good. You can see the grain pretty well, and you just take a pencil and you just real slowly kind of just go down that stave. And some staves it'll just be all over the place, and it'll be like a snaky bow. Some staves it'll be a straight line. Some staves it'll just have like one random little crooked spot. But you just kind of do whatever the tree did. You follow the way that the tree grew up, and that's your center line. And then from there you kind of draw, you make a bunch of measurements starting from the tip, moving down to the handle, and and then there's a ton of different ways to do that on how you really want to shape your limbs. But basically you just taper it down to the tip. And the smaller the tips, the better. At least on Osage, you have what's called like hand shock, which is basically if there's too much mass on the tips, when you shoot it, it'll like vibrate your hand real bad.
Oh, got it. That makes sense.
Shoot it. So you want as thin at tips as you can get. But basically, yeah, you draw out your shape, and then you take off the bulk, which, there's a lot of different ways to do that. I learned pretty quick. A table saw is not the way to do that, but some people right. I've just been using a draw knife. Maybe one day I'll get a bandsaw because it does take forever. That is extremely time consuming, taking off all the bulk. But and then you'll kind of get it to basically a point where like you'll have your handle, which you'll just have basically 6 inches of just wood that just was how it started, in that stave. And then everything on either end of the center of the bow is just limb. So, it'll just be like a 1/2 inch all the way down. And then at that point, you kind of the limbs will start to bend. And then you start what's called tillering, which is actually one of the things that like really caught my eye whenever I was first watching some YouTube videos on how to make a bow, was just like watching how they tiller a bow, which is basically you put your bow up on a wall and you have like a little rack. You string the bow. You have a pulley about 3 feet below the bow, and then you have a rope that runs through that pulley to you. So you can pull the bow back, but you can look at it up against a wall. So you can see where the limbs are stiff, where they're weak. And then you just you look at it, mark it, and take off wood where you need to take off wood. But that's really where making a good bow, that's where a good bow is made, is in the tillering. That's how you can really get one to shoot good, is with a good tiller. But and then that's another thing. Just on my first 4 bows, actually, I messed up the tiller on every single one of them just because I tried to go too fast. Because tillering, you just want to go super slow. You just take off paper thin little strips, and it'll just over time you work on it for maybe 5 or 6 hours, just getting the tiller right and getting the poundage. That's where you can determine the poundage that you're going to have.
Can you like, because I remember you said earlier, you said I was shooting for 45 and ended up at 40. Like, how do you, like, is that based off of the length, or is that based off of the thickness, how many layers you leave on your limbs?
Yeah, it's based off of the thickness mostly. But what I'll do is I'll take a scale, like a bow scale, and hook it up to the bow when I pull it back. And if I want a bow to be 45 pounds, I won't pull it any farther than 45 pounds. And then I'll just slowly remove wood off the belly. And that's another big thing, is you don't want to mess with the back at all. Like once you get that ring chased, you just leave it, and then you take all the wood off the other side of the limb.
Got it.
On,
Got it.
And
Okay.
you slowly just remove wood from the belly of the bow is what it'd be called. And that's how you get your tiller. And then you just remove wood until it is 45 pounds at, whatever your draw length is, which for me is like 27 and a half. And so, like the bow I'm working on now, the goal is 50 pounds. And so I just won't pull it past 50 or I never will, but I'll get it down to where it's 50 at 27 and a half. And that'll be where I leave it.
Yeah, dude, it sounds so complicated because
how many years have you been doing this, dude?
Not even a year yet. I built my first one in February.
Dude, you got like an engineer's brain or something.
Yeah. I just imagine you have to pre-plan everything pretty much, because if you take too much off, you can't put any on. You're done.
Right. Yeah.
You gotta just throw it away.
Go slow. Like that's what I've learned is you just slow is the key.
Yeah.
There's just no rushing a bow.
Oh man,
a lot easier to go out and buy one.
No, but it's so much cooler. And the fact you took game with one that you made, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I shot a hog.
Tell us about that.
So
run us through that. Let's hear. What's the first thing you got with your own bow?
The first thing I shot was a hog. So the fifth bow I built, I call it the Copperhead. Had copperhead skins on the back.
Oh man, that's so cool.
But that one, and it was a snaky bow too, which was cool, and it had
literally.
Yeah. It had big knots on it, and had like a knot that almost went all the way through the limb. So it was kind of just like this wild stave, but it turned out as a pretty good bow. But yeah, basically I had one of my buddies had some property that was just covered in hogs. So I went out there and worked on them for a couple of days. It really took me way too long to kill one, but I ended up getting a nice 60-pound hog probably. And so that was the first thing I killed with it. But then I killed a bear in September, and that was a pretty big hunt. We that was out of what we call the bear pit, which is basically me and my dad built this like A-frame kind of lean-to structure with just logs, and then dug down probably 2 feet. And then he killed a bear out of it 2 years ago with a stone point, just putting bait right out in front of it, like 5 yards. And this year, my goal was to kill one with a self bow. And so pretty much, I had to go in there like a month before season and dig it down deeper because my self bow was longer than his recurve. And so I dug it down, and then I went in there with it was for a MeatEater film. So there was like a camera crew at our bear camp, and I went in there with one of the camera guys, and we got in there at 4 a.m. on opening day, and we sat in there from daylight until dark. And we didn't see anything until 4:30. I was basically sitting like at the front of the pit, kind of like leaned forward with my head on my hands like this. And, at that point we've been sitting like 10 hours. And so our minds were kind of numb, just looking out of this like triangle for so long. And basically I just see a bear head just stick out like right in front of me. And we measured it the next day. We measured it with my bow, and it was like just over 6 feet from where I was sitting. It just stuck its head out. You just see it kind of appear out of the right side of that triangle. And it took a few more steps. And it was just like broadside at 6 feet. But, I just couldn't move because it was right there.
It would see you. Yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of looked around, and it stuck its head in the air like it was smelling something, and looked in the pit. And just like looked me like dead in the eyes, and then realizes that, there's 2 dudes in there, and takes off. So we didn't get it that, but it was the target bear. It was a rough bear year this year. So we only had like 2 or 3 bears coming in, but it was a nice mature bear. And, so we didn't get it that day. We go in the next day, same thing, 4 a.m. We start going up, and it's a long hike too. We have to use mules to bait this spot. It's a 1.5 miles as a crow flies, but it is just straight up the entire time. And so, we're waking up early so that way we can hike up the mountain, get there in time. And we sit all day long and we don't see anything until 7:30. So at that point, we had sat 28 hours just looking out of this triangle. And so my mind was kind of just numb to anything that was about to come out of from behind us, because you can't see behind you at all. You just are kind of guessing if you hear something. But the last 30 minutes of dark, I kind of got on my knees and got ready, just because I had a deadline at that point as to when I could actually see a bear and shoot it. And at I think it was 7:30, between 7:30 and 7:45. So it would have just been getting dark. I look up and this big bear is coming, the target bear that we saw the day before. And it just comes right into the bait and it gets broadside at about 6 yards, which was perfect. But she was too far to the right. And so the camera guy couldn't get on her. But she was so calm. I wasn't, I figured all she needed to do was just take a couple more steps. And that was a mistake, because basically about the time I passed up that shot, she kind of turns towards me, starts walking in a little closer, looks up, and then sees us in the pit again. And, at this point, this was the second to last day of the hunt. So it was kind of we were needing something to happen. And it was just a very rough bear year. So it was not like we were going to get a ton of chances. And pretty much she turns towards us, sees us, and she turns to start walking away. And she gets out at 10 yards with her butt facing me, going away. And I draw back and I whistle at her. And she stops and turns quarters away, just enough to get a shot. And really, with a self bow where it's totally instinctual, it was a pretty risky shot that had I done it over again, I probably wouldn't have taken the shot. But it was just that half-second decision of just I whistled, she stopped and looked, and I just had a split second to make a decision and decided to shoot. And I shoot, I couldn't really tell how the shot was, but she runs out at 40 yards and stops out there. And, usually you make a good shot on a bear, it won't run very far. And she stops and I get out of the pit and I'm looking at her and she keeps going. And I mean, at that point, I just felt sick. I mean, I was just almost certain that I just made a bad shot on her. And which is just a terrible feeling to have after a shot.
Yeah.
But basically, we kind of look back at the video. The arrow looked a little too far forward and it didn't get a ton of penetration. And so I was pretty much certain that I wounded her, which was just, a terrible feeling. But anyway, we start tracking her and, she bled right off the bat. We get 100 yards down the track and we find the arrow, and it actually looked quite a bit better than we were expecting. It got 13 inches of penetration.
Oh, wow.
And it was just, bright red blood, just like you'd want. But of course, she'd gone 100 yards at that point. And so we just kept trailing her and she just kept trending downhill. And basically we walked 250 yards from where I shot her. And she was just piled up dead under this big black gum tree.
Yes.
And I was pumped. I was shocked, really. I wasn't sure if we were going to find her, but after finding that arrow and she just kept going downhill, started to feel a little bit better about it. But yeah, it was really incredible.
That's amazing. Yeah, when they start going downhill, you gotta, dude. When I'm trailing something and I'm not sure about the shot, it's like an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah,
you're like, okay, so she jumped over that stick because she's not wounded as I thought she was, and
exactly.
you start making up all this
Your
stuff.
mind goes to all sorts of crazy places.
All kinds of, but once they're consistently going downhill, then you your emotions start to go up, and you're like, okay, downhill towards water, right. All that stuff,
Yeah.
I got so many questions. What are you doing with the mule? Are you riding the mules in when you're hunting, or just to put the bait?
We ride them in to that spot. A lot of times we'll ride them in to hunt. just because if we kill a bear up there, we don't want to walk all the way down the mountain to get the mules to bring it back up to pack the bear out. But we'll like tie them up down like a quarter mile below where we're hunting.
Okay, so like, how do you? Okay, because I've got into this year because I have one particular dog that won't stay with us when we're on a kill.
Mm-hmm.
She just keeps hunting, so I have to like stake her out basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how are you tying up a mule in the woods when you're going to be gone for hours and hours and hours? And you like,
oh man,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's tough. We've had mules get away from us a number of times in the backwoods from bad knots, or one time one of them even chewed through the rope. So yeah, they're
told you they were smart. I told you
they're tough. But yeah, we'll usually take like, I'm trying to remember how we do it. I think sometimes we'll take like 2 bridles because sometimes they'll pull so hard it'll break one. And then just a really tough lead rope, maybe even 2. And we tried chains for a while, but I don't really remember why that didn't work. But yeah, you just tie them up real tight. You don't give them any room to walk
just
around.
to a tree.
Yeah, to a tree.
And they're smart. They're smart enough to not go around the tree and like get all tangled up.
Well, yeah, you tie them up to where they just have like 6 inches, or you do like when we're like out west, like up in Montana or something, and we're taking them on a big trip. I forget what it's called, but you basically run like a
line.
A line, yeah, and you hook them up to a line that's connected between 2 trees, and you'll just tie them to that. But whenever we're just bear hunting, we just tie them right up to a tree. Okay. And yeah, they'll be down there kicking and bucking for a while, but eventually they'll kind of settle down.
Okay, all right. Because I always think about that. Everyone's like, "Oh, I'm tying my," and all the, like I said, I read these books and stuff, and it's like, I'm tying my mule up, and I'm gonna go on foot. And it's like, how is it not getting tangled? How is it like, you know what I mean? Like, because in the movies they just like drape it over like a stick, and then they walk away. It's like,
I wish it was like that.
Yeah, so that's fascinating. Okay, so second question: what kind of arrow are you making? Your own arrows, and what kind of broadhead were you using for that hunt?
Yeah, so that one I made 5 arrows, and I had one of my kind of like self bow mentors kind of help me make them. He showed me how on those, and I made some of them. But basically, those ones were cedar shaft, so like already they would have been like pretty well, shafted like out of a factory. So those ones wouldn't have
right. So you're getting like dowels from like Home Depot.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. They're really straight ones from Home Depot.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
And then there's a whole process on that, on like kind of looking at the grain and which direction the rings are, and
right.
That way it has kind of like the optimal, just like it flexes right. That part's kind of hard to describe, but pretty much you take your shaft, you fletch it, and on these arrows that I was shooting were turkey feathers from a turkey that I killed.
Heck yeah.
And then the broadhead, I think it was like a Cayman is what it was called, but it was like a big, heavy 200 grain broadhead.
Fixed blade, I would imagine.
Yeah. Real long, just 2 blade, cut on contact. And we had it razor sharp where it cut hair.
Nice.
But yeah, that was the arrow setup.
Okay. Yeah, because we got into the bows, and I feel like the arrows, to make your own arrows from scratch is like probably twice as hard as making the bow from scratch.
Yeah, I've messed around with some of the primitive arrows, stone points, and not using any like, special fletchers or anything, just kind of going by eye. And yeah, it's tough. But like you do bear shaft tuning. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Like you basically shoot it with no fletchings, and you see which way the knock is. You could tell if it needs to be stiffer or more flexible. But yeah.
So I'm not sure if I gathered correctly. So you didn't make your own arrows on this one? Did somebody make them, or were they store bought?
I made them with a guy. So basically, like this guy who's really experienced. I was kind of there, just like helping him, watching him make them.
I used to shoot archery when I was a kid. I haven't done it in a long, long time. My dad had an archery shop in Virginia. We were like super into it for 3 years, 4 years, and then,
nice,
moved and didn't do it anymore. So it's something I want to get back into.
Yeah, the instinctual shooting is super fascinating to me. I just always shoot recurve. A friend of mine gave me a handmade bow. I probably should have brought it in to show you. He made it from Osage also.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he made it from Osage, and like he gave it to me as a gift for like my wedding present or so. I can't remember, and it was but like I haven't shot it or even strung it for like 8 years. So like I feel like if I string it and pull it back, it's gonna explode and stab me in the face and kill me.
Yeah.
Like how long do they last? Like, and he sealed it and everything like that. So are you sealing your bows to like make sure that they don't lose any more moisture?
Yeah, I seal them. I've sealed some actually with bear grease. That actually
Heck
works really
yeah.
well.
That's
But
cool.
I've heard of guys who use I've heard of people using like 30-year-old fence posts as
Okay.
a bow, like Osage fence posts, and they'll be fine. I
Interesting.
mean, I know people have used older than that. Like we found some Osage fence posts on our property that we look back at like the property records and think they're like 70 years old. And I tried to make a 2-piece with those, but the one post that was going to work, I messed up on it. But I mean, it'll last a really long time.
That's you'd have to make a 2-piece, right? Because you said 68 inches in the beginning. So a fence post is not 68 inches off of the ground.
Yeah.
So half of it is all moist under the ground.
Yep.
So you'd have to cut the dry part off, cut the other dry part off, and then somehow
you
fuse
basically
them
split
together.
2 staves and then just kind of line them up. And then you use like a copper sleeve, or there's a lot of different ways to do it, but simply you use a copper sleeve and connect them.
How long are your bows you're making?
Usually they're 66 inches, but it depends on the bow. Longer they say is more forgiving. Like it just has less, like you'll have more limb. So there's, you don't have to worry, or your tiller doesn't have to be as perfect, but I usually go 66 inches. That's about the right balance between, having enough limb to even out the tension, but also being functional enough to like carry around in the woods.
Yeah.
So what's your next target with your bow?
As far as like animals go, probably, well, we're thinking about going after black bears.
Come to Jersey. We'll get you all the bears you want.
I've heard there's a bunch up there.
Dude, it's out of control. My dogs are baying them up in brush piles where my rabbits are. It's ridiculous. There's so many bears. It's out of control. It's like
Dang.
2 dachshunds in a brush pile and a giant bear. It's like, I ran into 3 or 4 last year, like just one with cubs.
Really?
She had a cub under her and in a depression in the ground in one of my best rabbit fields. Like,
dang.
We're infested over here, man. So if you're talking about bad bear years in Arkansas, come to Jersey. It's never a bad year.
I bet they're probably pretty heavily hunted in Arkansas.
Yeah, they're definitely one of our higher, or just people want to hunt them here in Arkansas. They're starting to become a little more popular. But the reason it was so tough this year was because the acorns fell early. They fell like before the season started. So all the bears moved off the baits and started eating acorns, which is, the main way people kill them down here is over bait. That's the best way to concentrate them and to kill a older, mature bear.
So we had, what was it, Aaron? 3 weeks ago, we had the record bear taken with a bow. We had Brian. What was his name? Brian Melvin came on the show. He talked about.
I heard about that. That was like up there near you guys.
Yeah, right. It was like 45 minutes away from where I live. Aaron's in North Carolina. I'm in southern New York. And he was talking about how the bait is extremely important and you have to time it right and pattern them. And the bait is like, it's not just a matter of this is the thing. And like, so Bear, we have people that listen and they're like, they're hunters, and they're a little bit, they're a little bit sensitive to like baiting, and they, why do you bait? It's unethical and stuff like that. And like, we talk about it on so many episodes, how it's like even more ethical than any other form of hunting to bait.
Right.
But what Brian was talking about is that the bait has to be a specific, not specific, but it has to be a specific consistency to prolong it. So like, what are you using for bait? You just throwing corn out, or you have like a proprietary something that someone's mixing and you're buying?
We usually have, well, a mix of stuff. Like this year, for example, we had a bunch of nuts, which kind of will last a while and will kind
Right.
of be like that filler food. But then we had just some donuts and pastries and candy. I mean,
Yeah.
they'll eat. I mean, they definitely have a sweet tooth for sure, but uh, yeah. And then, we'll hang up sardines and stuff and trees. We'll pour grease on it just to kind of like get the scent out. Uh, but yeah, that's the main thing. But really, whenever it comes down to it, they'll pick a white oak acorn over all the bait you'll give them.
Right. Because they know it's safe. Because they have to. Bears are extremely smart, and they have to understand that when they're at a bait site, that it's like forbidden treasure in some way. At least the older ones that you're targeting, they got to know
Yeah.
that they're on high alert when they're in there, and they know they're a little stressed out while they're eating. They have to.
For sure. And I mean, like at this point in Arkansas, probably most bears that you'll see have been on a bait site at some point in their lives. There's a lot of bait sites where there's bears at least. And so, yeah, they're definitely a little wiser when they're at the bait site. And the older males, which would be the target bears, very often they'll like either go nocturnal right before season starts or just disappear.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're really tough to kill over bait.
It's incredible. Yeah. So it's not just like some people like to say shooting fish in a barrel. It's
right.
It's not that easy.
Definitely a tough hunt. And
yeah,
like the big advantage to it is that you can be selective because you will have more opportunities at bears. Like there are going to be more bears coming into a bait, especially during a good year, but you can be selective and you can harvest an older mature male. You can target it. And, in the long run, that's what's best for the population. Like I know here in Arkansas, they've been trying to keep the like harvest numbers at like a real specific, they have some specific percentage between like males or boars and sows that they want killed. And so they've really been, pushing for people to kill the older mature boars, which is just nearly impossible if you're just out in the woods hunting them. You just almost have to kill them over bait, and they're still tough over bait.
Exactly. Listen, I hunt bears as often as I can, but I got them in my garbage like nonstop come like April through like August 29th.
Dang.
And like in New York.
Is that when season starts?
Dude, believe it or not, New York is like, dude, everybody likes to rag on New York. New York is pretty legit, bro. Like bear season opens like September 1st. For like 2 weeks. And I believe like the 1 year, I don't know about this past year, but the 1 year it was like you could shoot them with a pistol, rifle, crossbow, shotgun.
Really?
Like whatever you wanted. No bait though. But they're like constantly in my garbage. I'm constantly running out in my porch, throwing like my work boots at them. The one night I just opened up the door and came out in the porch, and it was like I'm getting better at IDing them in terms of weight, right? Because everybody always thinks it's a 300 pounder, but it was definitely a decent sized bear, like one that I'd be proud to shoot. And instead of just running away, it just immediately treed in my yard.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like during like it was like a UFC fight. I had my brother-in-law over, my wife, my son. We all went out in the porch, and like this thing is just like 30 feet up in my tree, just like chomping his teeth at me.
Yeah. Seeing a big bear in a tree is something else.
Dude, and then he went out and he went up over a limb, and he was like standing on the limb, like with his feet. It's ridiculous how acrobatic they are. They're like, that's the last animal you want to like come after you. Yeah. And speaking of coming after you in the woods, I heard a story through the grapevine that you took off into the woods for multiple days with the hope of shooting a bear.
Oh yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So
you remember that?
Yeah. That would have been 3-4 years ago. I was 15, but yeah, pretty much since I was a kid, my dad always told me one day I'm just going to send you out in the woods for a couple of days and you're going to kill a bear. And so whenever I like first started bear hunting. And, once my siblings, once we all kind of started being of the age where we could bear hunt, I decided that I wanted to kill my first bear on national forest in Arkansas, not over bait. And so pretty much I hunted on national forest for 4 or 5 years and, never even saw a bear. And whenever I was 15, so I hunted since I was 11 on national forest for specifically targeting black bears. And then whenever I was 15, we basically just said, all right, it's time to just go back in the woods. And
Yeah, as one does, right? You're 15,
right.
just
Yeah.
dude. If I tried that with my son at 15, my wife would like freak out. She'd be like, "Poppy, no!" She'd be like holding my son, like We'd be trying to get her off of him, going to the woods with his bow. There's no way, dude. There's no way. Was your mom okay with that?
I mean,
She
yeah,
didn't know.
yeah, she was fine with it.
No, she's like, "You must become a man," and then she just sends you out.
Kind of a rite of passage, yeah, for sure.
That is like the most legit thing ever. Okay, so tell us about that. Go ahead.
So yeah, basically I hike back in there, get up on top of this big mountain, and I get there like the day before season, and it had been real dry, and we had this water hole that we knew of that was just like way far back in there, and it usually would have at least some water in it. And so pretty much I camp that first night, and then, next morning is opening day.
When you say camp, like you brought like a tent with you and like
yeah,
granola bars and stuff?
Yeah, I had like a tent and some freeze dried meals.
Okay.
Yeah, so I kind of set up my camp like 3/4 of a mile probably from this water hole. And in the morning, I was there for 3 days before I killed one, but so I kind of developed a system. I would hunt, I'd like slip hunt is what we'd call it, where I just kind of creep through the woods real slow, just looking for one.
What do you guys call it?
Slip hunt.
We call it still hunt.
Still hunt.
Where you're walking super slow.
Like when you're being still.
Okay, so in Jersey and New York, we call still hunting like where you're basically going like 100 yards in like 4 hours.
Yeah, that's. I've heard some people down here call it that too.
Okay.
I think they're similar, but what I would call a slip hunt would be just kind of like basically just creeping through the woods real slow. But maybe going like half mile in 2 hours, so definitely real slow. But pretty much, yeah, I'd slip hunt in the morning until like 9:30, and then I would go to this water hole and I'd set it all day. And first day, I didn't see anything. Second day, I actually had a really small sow with 2 cubs come in. She was like an orange sow almost. And they came in, which was just like super cool because at that point, that would have been the first bear that I'd ever saw on national forest. And so yeah, they came in. I watched the cubs for a while, and then they just drank some water and took off. And the water was just like a little puddle, really. I mean, it wasn't like a pond, but it was just enough for them to drink out of. And so,
is it just like spring fed or like a vernal pool?
No, I think it just is probably an old settler's pond, maybe up on top. But yeah, it just kind of collects water. It's stagnant. But yeah, I mean, it was probably like a 3-foot little puddle.
Oh, okay.
Maybe like 3 foot by 1 foot deep. So it was little, but I mean, that's all I needed. And it was just really far from any other water. And so I sit there that day, I see that sow and cubs. And then the third day comes around, and I'm in a saddle, like maybe 15 feet above this water hole, and I'm shooting a compound. And I look off to my right, and I see a bear. I see a black bear, and it is walking across, and it starts digging like in the ground. And I see like some yellow jackets start swarming it.
Oh,
and I
cool.
mean, it didn't even bat an eye. It just kept digging, and they'll eat the larva in there. And so he dug up that yellow jacket nest. I mean, probably got stung like crazy, but just, I don't know. They just don't mind it.
That's insane.
Yeah. And he came in behind me at like 5 yards, and I was drawn back, and he's headed straight to the water hole, and gets like right downwind of me, smells me, and turns to start going away, and just kind of stops there. I mean, at like 5 yards, I mean, almost straight down, and I shoot it. And yeah, that was probably the most excited I've ever been after shooting an animal. It's kind of like the end of a 5 year journey to trying to kill one on national forests. But yeah, I gave it a little while, tracked it. It went like way down in this just like thick, steep, nasty. I mean, it was just terrible. But I started like skinning it, and from where I started skinning it to where I ended skinning it was like 15 yards apart. Like it had slid down the mountain as I was.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so I got it skinned, and my dad comes up and two other guys, and we packed it out.
How puckered were you trailing that bear all by yourself in the middle of nowhere?
I was probably a little naive, maybe. I wasn't real worried about it.
He was only
Really?
15, bro. He didn't know any better.
Yeah.
Ah, dude, I'd be like,
scary, though, on that was I was actually walking down this mountain, like tracking it, and I kind of like stopped and was like looking for blood, and I looked at my foot, and there was a copperhead about
ooh,
an inch from the tip of my boot, and that was the only thing. But I was pretty certain the bear was dead, though, so I wasn't like.
you made a
really-
nice shot on him.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
were you shooting?
I think I was shooting like a mission hammer, just like a small, like kids like starter compound bow.
Mission hammer?
Yeah, it's like a sub brand of Matthews.
Just buy
Maybe it was
Hoyt. Just buy Hoyt, please.
Are you're a Hoyt man?
I'm a Hoyt man.
What do you recommend, Bear?
I really have not tried enough to really tell, but I mean, it really seems like if you get any of just kind of like the higher end bows, they're all.
They're all good.
They're all good, yeah. They really are. At the end of the day, a Matthews is a phenomenal piece of equipment, and the Hoyt is an even more phenomenal piece of equipment.
I see. It seems like you just pick one and go with it.
I don't know. I like Hoyt. I stick with Hoyt. I shot PSE for a long time. I must have killed 50, 60 deer with a PSE. And my dad got me a Hoyt for my birthday. And I just, when I was
we're actually sponsored by Hoyt.
Yeah, we're sponsored by Hoyt. No.
Oh, are you serious?
No.
We might be after they hear this.
Okay.
So you saw the copperhead, you smacked it on the head, you put it in your bag. You said I'm using this skin for one of my next bows, and then you kept walking, and you found your bear.
But yeah, pretty much I keep walking, find the bear dead, and whenever I found it, that was whenever I really got excited because it did take me a little while to track it, and for you know how the thoughts come in and you start thinking like, oh, did I make a bad shot on it? But it ended up being a good shot. It was like, not too far from where I shot it. But yeah, and then I get it skinned and the cavalry comes and we pack it out of there. And it was pretty cool. Like, we have like a big bear camp every year where just kind of a bunch of people from all over come and, we'll hunt, eat dinner and just kind of have a good time. But I was out in the woods and so I hadn't seen anybody in like 3 days. And then whenever we got back down to where the truck was, it was like the whole camp was there.
That's awesome.
It was pretty neat packing out that bear.
You must have felt real good about that, right? You had to.
Oh yeah, I was pumped.
When your dad greeted you, did he do like that, the Native American
No, he should have.
Yeah, he should have to seal the deal. Dude, that is amazing, man. Like I spent a lot of time in the field, man, but I don't know if I could just go camping for 3 days in the middle of nowhere by myself.
Yeah,
that's incredible that you pulled that off, man. That's amazing.
Yeah. That was definitely one of my bigger accomplishments, just as far as hunting goes.
Yeah. Now in Arkansas, because in Jersey you have to drag the whole 500-pounder out of the woods. You have to load it in a vehicle, and you have to go to a check station where there's psycho anti-hunters protesting right outside the line.
Oh man,
going crazy, and you have to basically drive through them while they're calling you all kinds of evil names. So a game warden can say, yeah, that's a bear. And yeah, you shot it. And where'd you shoot it? And great. And then you can drive away.
Mhm.
I guess you don't have to do that in Arkansas?
No, you have to send in a tooth and then like a hair sample.
Okay.
And then they just kind of test that and then, tag it and everything. But yeah, you don't have to take them to a check station or anything.
What kind of tooth? It's not a canine, right? You don't have to send in a canine.
No, it's like a premolar, something like that.
I was going to say.
I have to watch the YouTube video every year
your skull
on
up, man.
which specific tooth to pull, but one of the smaller ones, yeah.
Yeah, you're not taking my canine. No way. That's amazing. Yeah. Do you have any stats back from the state on that bear, like particularly how old he was, stuff like that?
That one, I can't remember. I think it was like a 3-year-old bear. But yeah, I think he was 3. He was 2 or 3, but it was like a 170-pound bear.
Okay.
So he was probably 3, but I can't really remember exactly.
Nice. That's awesome, man. Dude. Yeah, I could not pull that off. Aaron, could you pull that off?
Absolutely.
All right.
No doubt about it.
Okay. I'm glad you're confident because.
Well, let me put it this way. I can tell you for sure I couldn't pull it off when I was 15.
Yeah. Good point. That's a good point.
Yeah, that's hardcore, man.
Dude, I see bear scat in the woods, dude, and I pull my knife out and I just start walking.
That's
around.
your dream. That's Casey's dream come true.
Bear, you don't fantasize about a bear coming in on you and like stabbing it to death. Like, come on. Every guy fantasizes about that.
I don't know about that. I mean, I maybe fantasize about a bear coming in and shooting it, but stabbing one just seems a little low. Low probability that you'll really come out on top.
Go out swinging,
smart.
bro. You gotta go out swinging.
Smart man.
So basically, if we just go down and through your Instagram, there's like so many different topics to talk about. We talked about bows, talk about killing squirrels with fiests and mules.
Mm-hmm.
Now, okay, so now this next one is so like I follow your dad and MeatEater and stuff like that. So I know your father's character. I know your character. Mm-hmm. You guys are good, honest men. Tell us about the story with the bobcat.
Yeah, so that one was probably one of the wildest things that's ever happened to me while I was hunting.
And I must say that because Bear and his father are very honest, very upstanding people, and I know their character, and I believe this story because it's incredible. It really is. So
there are aspects to it that are a little unbelievable, just that kind of how everything happened. But yeah, basically, I was hunting in this like river bottom, and so there's this big river, and then there was kind of like another little tributary kind of creek that fed into it that was dry, totally dry.
Don't start with the exact hunt where you pulled the shot. What set that up? Why were you in the woods that day? What was your target that day?
Okay, I was deer hunting that day with the self bow. So at this point, I would have never killed anything with a self bow. And I was hunting with that first snaky bow that I told y'all about, that first one that I shot.
Right.
That another guy made. But yeah, so I was deer hunting. And this was an area I'd been hunting, like the last 2 or 3 weeks at that point.
Okay.
And
were you planning to hunt out of a saddle? What'd you call it before?
A tree saddle?
Were you planning to hunt out of a tree saddle, or what'd you call it? We call it still hunting. You called it what?
Oh, slip hunting.
Were you planning to slip hunt that day?
I had a stand set up that I had been hunting out of.
All
but
right.
What was happening was so basically the stand was like right on this dry creek bed. And what was happening was no matter what the wind was, the river was pulling all the wind south. Like it was just a real fast flowing river, and it was, real cold. And it was just, you could see like the fog in the morning, even if whenever you're up on top of the mountain, the wind was out of the north, it was always going to be stuck south. So pretty much these deer would just bed down kind of at the end of that. And I would be in the stand and I would see them cross this tributary and they would wind me. And they did that like multiple mornings in a row. and they'd always spook in the same direction. They'd go towards the river. And so I had the idea that maybe I could scent bump them using like old clothes and boots and stuff that smelled like me. I could slip in early in the morning, put that, at the base of my stand, and then sneak back around and go down to the other side of the tributary in the direction that those deer were spooking. And so basically in this, creek bed, it was real flat, and there's a spot where it dropped where the water would usually run whenever there was water in it. And it was like this 3-foot drop, and it had some weeds growing up on it. And so I kind of pulled apart some of those weeds and got set up, on the ground. But, my wind would have been good because the deer were on the other side of it. But it wasn't a likely spot to see a deer. It was just the direction that they were going to spook. And so anyway, I do that whole thing. I go put a bunch of old clothes and smelly boots at the base of the tree, sneak back around, get set up, and I wait. And it was real cold too. I think it was below freezing. And I had to cross this river coming in too. So I had these like big hip boots. Or wait, no. I just had rubber boots at that point. But anyway, I had to cross the river going in. And so I was set up just on my knees, which is pretty uncomfortable, hard to sit still. And I sit there for maybe 45 minutes, and I just see a bobcat coming down this tributary. And as I look closer at it, I see it's got a squirrel in its mouth. I can see its tail flopping, and it is just making a beeline, straight towards me. And you know how bobcats are. Any little thing you do, they're going to see you. And they're just lightning fast. I've never killed a bobcat. Like up to this point, I had never killed a bobcat. And he basically is coming straight towards me. And once he gets like 5 yards, he kind of angles off to my left side. And he gets between me and these big, thick weeds that are right out in front of me, or, kind of off to the left. So he can't see me. And I immediately swing around and draw back as quick as I can. And he drops down this little 3-foot drop, and I just shoot at him while he's moving. And the arrow skips right off his back, and he pitches the squirrel and runs out behind me at like 10 yards, and then just stops and just looks right at me. And I don't really know. I can't say for certain what he was doing, but what I think was probably the case was he worked hard for the squirrel, and just, maybe it caused him to stand there an extra couple seconds to, kind of evaluate, like, do I go back for the squirrel or not? I don't know. There's really no way to tell. But he just ran out 10 yards and stopped. And the squirrel was still, right where I just shot at him. And I had a back quiver on. And so I just kind of reached back behind me, and I pulled out another arrow, knocked it, drew back, aimed for right behind the shoulder, shot. And I think it was a pretty good shot, but, bobcats being as fast as they are, he ducked and turned, and that arrow just hit him right in the back of the head, and he just dropped. Instantly. And so I walk over there, and I couldn't pull the arrow out. So I kind of just set him right next to me, grabbed the squirrel. I figured I might as well take the squirrel too.
Heck yeah.
And I keep hunting. At this point, I'm down to one arrow, and it's like it's not a great arrow. Sometimes like whenever you've been hunting all season, you shoot them, like you kind of end up with like your backup arrow being a little bit janky. This one had like a broadhead that I'd shot before, so it was kind of dull, and it was real light. Like the arrow, it just wasn't a great setup. But, it was what I had, and I couldn't pull that one out of its head, and I lost the one that I shot at it. And so I keep sitting there, and probably not even 7 or 8 minutes later, I just hear some cracking in the woods. And sure enough, here comes 3 deer, just straight from where I had been seeing them every single morning. And they were walking across this tributary. And to be fair, they did not look like they were spooked. Like they may have just been coming through. They probably didn't smell my, scent bundle up there, but
yeah,
I like to think that they might have. And anyway, they walk out, and the biggest doe steps out at like 18 yards. And I draw back and shoot, and that arrow just hits her right behind the shoulder, just perfect shot. And the arrow bounces off the deer, and the deer takes off running with no arrow in it.
Oh my God.
And so anyway, I walk up and get the arrow, and I mean, it was just like, I mean, I couldn't complain. I just killed the bobcat. Killing a deer would have just almost been too good.
Yeah.
But it just bounced off the deer.
God was trying to humble you on that day, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it just couldn't have worked out that well. But
have you guys seen the video of the bobcat ringing around the tree? The dude's sitting in the stand, and a bobcat's just like after the squirrel.
Craziness. Crazy video.
Yeah, I'm just incredibly agile.
There's a bunch of those. There's one like on a golf course where it chases the squirrel all the way up, and then the squirrel tries to bail, and the bobcat bails with it, catches it like on a small branch, and then just falls like 25 feet to the ground, and then just has it in its mouth and walks away with it.
They're wild.
Bobcats are insane. A friend of ours, I was actually just hunting with him today, in the pouring rain, mind you. He was flying his birds, and I forgot what he was like. His dog was baying something. No, he heard some rustling in like the he was working a hedgerow, and in the hedgerow, he like walks in there and he sees like a deer laying on the ground, and it's kind of like doing like some spasms and stuff. He goes, "Oh, it must have got hit by a car, and it just kind of stumbled over here and it's dying." And then he looks a little deeper in the briars, and he sees a bobcat like on its throat.
Oh, no way!
Like right in front of his face.
Dang.
And then the bobcat's looking at him while it's got the deer in the throat. And then they both just like, the bobcat just jumps up and like runs away. And then the deer just jumps up and runs that way. And he's like, what the heck? You know, like
when
right in front of him. It was Tom Cullen.
Yeah, I know, but this wasn't today?
No, not today. Dude, it was pouring rain today. No, I wish.
For some reason, I was imagining that happened today.
It would be really cool if it was today. No, it was Tom. Tom told me that story. And yeah, he just had a trapper get on his property, and this kid traps my property. Zach, this is gonna be a problem now. I have to say his name because he's a big deal, and he lives right down the street from me.
This is the second time you couldn't remember somebody's name.
Gidney. It's Gidney. Zach Gidney.
Okay.
They do trapper seminars all over the country. He's up literally. Trapping season opened like November 1st. They're up to like 120 foxes already. It's ridiculous. They're super good. And a fisher in Orange County, New York, which is crazy.
Dang.
That means nothing to me and Bear.
Well, whatever. It means something to me. And so I set him up with a friend of the show, former guest of the show, two-time former guest of the show, Tom Cullen. And I think they took 25 foxes.
Nice.
Red fox off his property in like 3 weeks. It's like
Tom probably had no idea he had that many there.
No, and there's still rabbits there, and there's still squirrels there, which is crazy. So it's like they're putting the sets like right on the hedgerow where we hawk, and there's still rabbits, there's still squirrels, and they took 25 off of there. It's ridiculous.
Dang.
So Bear, you've been dabbling with trapping yourself.
Dabbling, yeah. I'm not an experienced trapper by any means, but I have been running trap lines. And yeah, I caught a coon the other day. So far, that's been my only success, but I've only just started the last couple weeks. But
I'm getting ready to start too.
Really?
Yeah. I'm going to try beaver. That's the first thing I'm going for.
Yeah, I'd like to get into beaver and coyote. Coyote's what I've really been after, but I hear they're pretty smart. But my dad went on like a 2 or 3 year trapping spree whenever I was a kid. And so like, I would have kind of had some exposure to it. But yeah, really, I'm pretty new to it.
I feel like if I could trap just one beaver this year, I'm going to be happy. I feel the same way about the coyote too. I think if I could trap one coyote, I'd be happy.
Yeah. I think I'm in the same boat.
To me, that's the equivalent of going out and getting a bear or something when you're new to trapping.
Yeah.
The best I ever did was trap myself in a conibear in my living room.
Yeah, Bear, we shared that story on New England Naturals. I think that was the guest. We shared Casey and I have both got trapped ourselves in conibear traps.
Yeah. They were a guest on the MeatEater Radio Live show. They're good friends of the show, good people. And they do a lot of really good stuff for trapping, like in terms of like social media to like the general public. They're really good.
Advocacy.
New England Naturals, is that what you said?
Yeah.
New England Natural. Yeah, look them up. They're great. They're great.
Yeah, I've seen them. They do a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
They're wearing a Bear Grease hat too.
He wears the Bear Grease hat every single video. You know, I love it.
We need to get a Sporting Chance hat on him.
I don't think that's going to happen. It's probably not going to happen.
So Bear, what's next for you, man? You've done so much, and you're a very young guy. You know, what are you really looking forward to that's coming up?
Yeah, I would definitely say some of the bigger hunts. Now, you know, I've been working for MeatEater the last couple months, and it looks like this next year, I'm going to be doing quite a bit with them. And so, yeah, some other hunts that I'm not totally certain on what they are yet, but I know that I've got just a couple bigger hunts. So yeah, I'm excited for that.
When you say bigger hunts, like, what do you mean by bigger hunts?
Like a trip, you know, like a going somewhere,
okay.
or like a film.
Oh, okay. all the stuff that doesn't necessarily matter.
Right.
No, but it's super cool. And I was going to say this in the beginning of the show, but I just want to keep it to myself. But dude, I'm a huge fan of MeatEater. I listen every single Monday. So you're way cooler than pretty much everybody that's on the show. So like, you know what I mean? Like, no shade to any of them, but like, you're like out here doing stuff. You're making your own bows. You're killing bears out of pit blinds. You're camping in the wilderness, killing bears over water holes. Like,
well, I appreciate
they should give you some sort of a position with their company, because they're the leader, in my opinion. They're the leader in the outdoor media space, and you belong right there with them. So that's awesome, man. Yeah, heck yeah, man.
I'm definitely looking forward to working with them.
Yeah, good for you. Cool. You're like the full, well-rounded outdoorsman, in my opinion.
Well, that's my goal.
Yeah, you're pretty close, man. I'd say you're 19 years old. You're pretty dang close. Good stuff, man. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap this thing up?
Not really, but you know, I appreciate you guys having me on. I really like all y'all stuff too. The falconry, it looks cool.
A lot of fun, man.
Yeah, but I appreciate you guys having me on.
Everybody can find you at, what is it, Bear Newcomb on social media?
Bear Newcomb on Instagram is pretty much the only platform I'm on right now, but that'll probably expand throughout this year.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, so everybody go give him a follow. It's like the most interesting page. Like, he's making bows, he's killing bears, he's trapping stuff, killing squirrels, he's riding mules. It's like pretty much everything that anybody that would be listening to the show would be interested in. So
there you go.
Give the guy a follow. Awesome.
All right,
Thanks, Bear.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man.
For sure.
Thank you.